Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. P seems to be a favorite litter for stashing away your ill-gotten wealth, to avoid paying taxes, or even for laundering ill-gotten wealth. Panama created a watershed for the first expose, followed by Paradise Papers and Pandora Papers. Pandora Papers, like the earlier ones, is a global network. And curiously, all these are normally blamed on those countries' small islands like Isle of Man or Caribbean countries, which have lax tax laws. The reality is the other way around. It is the so-called advanced countries that are primarily responsible for this global network's existence and continued progress. The Pandora Papers may not have a heavy focus on Canada, although RCMP has come up with a very clear statement that hundreds of Canadians are also involved, like thousands of Indians, Pakistanis, British, and name it. But coming to Canada, we can see that the papers shed more light on the issues that are very familiar to this country, Canada, which, according to me and to the revelations, is the hub of such operations. And anybody who is familiar with Canadian laws or who are clear with the commercial financial transparency are aware of that. People like 600 people in Pakistan, more than 1,000 people, including the bigwigs in India, have made use of these loopholes in the laws of the countries like Canada. The Pandora Papers, the latest leak of offshore financial records, as I said earlier, does not focus on the basics. It talks about other things, but the real basics it doesn't talk about. Nonetheless, these papers shed light on a global network of illicit financial flows. And Canada is a hub of that. And that has been corroborated with the statement of James Cohn, Executive Director of Transparency International. 12 million documents have been recovered, and these are from 14 offshore service providers. They talk about Ambani's, and they talk about Radhav, and they talk about the political leaders, and they talk about anybody. But 12 million documents offer a very detailed picture of how the wealthy can shelter their money from the prying eyes of the tax authorities and law enforcement. The document dump was obtained by the Washington DC based International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. It's a network of reporters and organizations, and this follows Panama Papers as well as Paradise Papers controversy. All those leaks are basically identical. Now, what has happened is that this time it has almost global repercussions, much more than Panama had and Paradise had. Now, here are some key questions about how the wealthy hide their money, which practice means practically for Canada. No, it isn't. The law very clearly states it's perfectly legal for Canadians to have financial accounts and assets abroad. They are allowed to put their money where they want. Fine. But the second part is much more different. I can understand there are plenty of legitimate reasons for holding funds and assets outside one's country, such as doing business, investing abroad, or simply owning a vacation home abroad. But the devil is in the detail. The offshore financial systems can be a way of sheltering wealth from tax and law enforcement agencies. It's extremely difficult, almost impossible for Canada Revenue Agency and other tax authorities to know what's going on there. Know how much tax should be paid at home on the amounts that are flowing through these places. There is a wall of firewall, rather I'll say, wall of ignorance that has been erected, and what happens there is not known to the tax authorities, either in Canada or in India or in Pakistan or in UK or anywhere in the world. So then what happens? Since the tax authorities are not aware of that, evidently those people who have ill-gotten wealth get benefit. Now at issue are two issues, tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax avoidance is not breaking the law. It's a murkier concept. It generally involves minimizing one's tax burden in a way that are within the letter of law. Now the question is, are they in the spirit of law? No. In 1988, Canada added a general anti-avoidance rule to the Income Tax Act. And that has served as a reference point to draw the line between acceptable strategies and tax avoidance which abuses the law. Now this term offshore accounts, originates from some of the small island countries that have become notorious for being tax havens. And they are not only in Caribbean, they are in England as well, Isle of Man, Monaco. Highly paid people live there. The richest country per capita, but then they are there. And some of the financial service providers involved in Pandora Papers operate in, for example, Cyprus. They operate in the British Virgin Islands. And the latest leaks makes it clear that offshore locations are not the only place where the wealthy can set up opaque financial structures. One revelation already coming out of Pandora paper is that USA, your next door, South Dakota, is a very prominent jurisdiction for anonymous companies to be incorporated. So you incorporate a company, it's an anonymous company, nobody knows who the owner is. Operate that at a loss to show all your losses or profits, and then since it's anonymous, the profits are not taxed. In 2016, 5 years back, the word was aghast at the Panama Papers. And those revealed something which I thought would compel the government to take action, but it did not. Those Panama Papers revealed very clearly that Canada itself is a tax haven for many people. Now mind it is not a tax haven for you and me, no. But it is tax haven for the manipulators who can manipulate the laws in connivance with the political leadership. The country's pristine international reputation and lax anti-money laundering regime have made it very attractive destination for criminals looking for a place to park their funds. Now, if you get a deposit $10,000, RCMP shall be breathing down your neck. The moment you go to the bank and deposit 9,999, it's okay. Make it 10,000 and then you are subject for investigation. But suppose you deposit $25 million, then there will be no objection for the simple reason you can say, well, this is for investment in real estate, period. And that's why the real estate prices go up. Now, it takes money to hide your money. That's the major thing. You have got, if you deposit 10,000, maybe you can't pay the local medium for its services. But if you're depositing, say, $1 billion or 10 million or 20 million, you can easily afford to pay $1 million. And once you pay $1 million to any politically connected person, your money is safe. So circumventing taxes and investigators require very sophisticated legal and tax strategies. The root of the problem are the laws and the tax advisors. The Canada has monetary penalties for tax professionals who help clients prepare tax fraud. But has it ever been applied? Now, whether or not the account is actually offshore, sheltering wealth involves setting up complex financial structures that make it difficult to figure out who it practically owns. I'll give you an example. You have a company called 123. Now, this 123 company is owned by another company that you have called company ABC. And that is owned by company QWR. And that behind that there is one person, say Ahmed or Ramesh or Bob, whatever, who owns 25% of that company. So 25% owning QWR, owns 100% of ABC, owns 100% of 123. Now look at it. The money would ultimately come to Bob. Who are the other 75%? I'll come to that later. So all the business expenses of 123 are tax deductible. All the business expenses of ABC are tax deductible. All the business expenses of QWR are tax deductible. And finally, only 25% is to be paid by the visible owner. There is 75%. Now, where does this money go? This money quietly goes up to St. Kitts, Isle of Man, Virgin, Morocco, and so on. Almost 95% money. And that is the real issue. If the laws were there that you cannot have these numbered companies, then the problem would not be there. Now, who is this guy who is owning 25%? Where did he get that money from? Nobody asked. The financial institutions have an obligation to address this question and verify who are really doing business with. And it was not until June of 2021 that Canada introduced similar requirement for others. But then, isn't it too late? Isn't it bolting the stable after the horses have run away? Even with the strict rules in place, it can often be difficult for private sector to assess who really owns what. That whole company law in Canada is absolutely manipulative, and if you know how to turn the screws, you can screw the government and the tax authorities. So what we basically need is a publicly searchable registry of beneficiary ownerships. In 2019, 2 years back, British Columbia created a publicly searchable registry of information. And that registry shows the ownership of land in province Quebec. But meanwhile, the beneficiary ownership to be reported in the existing corporate registry is only there, only British Columbia and Quebec. Alberta, Ontario, and that's the economic engine. If you saw the budget this year, 2021 budget year, government said that they'll have 2.1 million to support the creation of a public corporate beneficiary ownership registry. When? In 2025. By that time, Panama, Paradise, Pandora, and maybe another P would be there. And let's be very clear. Until such transparent public registry company is available, the laws as they exist are amenable to all manipulation. You can say that put more money in RCMP, CRA, okay. But at the end of the day, when you look at the Pandora Papers, the Paradise Papers and the Panama Papers, you find that there's a lot of dirt that has to be sifted. And the people who are doing it are doing a yeoman's job. Now the question is, if the tax system of Canada is so horrible and subject to manipulation, and Canada prides itself on being a very well advanced OECD country, G8 country, G20 or what not, all the Gs. Is it really so? Why is it that such advanced countries like Canada and even USA, South Dakota, I'm talking of Canada because I belong to Canada, till the laws are made transparent and subject to the public scrutiny, the P's, whether it's Panama or Paradise or Pandora. Now, Pandora's box, when it is opened, has created ripples all over the globe. But is going to something emerge out of that? I don't hope so. Look, what happened after Panama? Nothing. There were ripples for about 6-7 months. Paradise, less so. Pandora, already the ripples are dying down. For the simple reason that the people who matter don't want the exposes to be of a permanent nature. There's a lot of hue and cry in the headlines, and then the government set up the inquiries, committees, and then they say, okay, now the case is being subject to inquiry, so they clam shut. And the process of looting the public keeps on advancing its tentacles in the body politic, breeding what? A, corruption. B, political chicanery. C, exploitation of the honest taxpayer. And when countries like Canada do that, and the governments are aware of that, the tax people are aware of that, the Transparency International is aware of that, and yet no action is taken, then there's a sneaking doubt that maybe the political leadership doesn't want to take a suitable action because they have some axe to grind. Now it's up to you to judge whether they have or not. But I have a sneaking doubt that something is rotten with the state of Denmark, here state of Canada. Think about it. Thank you.